Hello, my name is Jenna Jenkins, and I'm going to be talking to you today about abuse and sexual harassment in the workplace. So, being a victim of workplace abuse and sexual harassment can be very traumatizing and leave you feeling unsafe at work, especially when the one doing the abusing is your boss. This is why we need to talk about it, so that people know what to look for when it's happening, and when they see it, they know what to do. The article that we're going to be using today is called Is Your Boss a Bully? By Barbara D. Janusis. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. First, let's start off by talking about what harassment and bullying are. They're the psychological harassment by someone you work with. One study proved that there was a strong gender component to the bullying, and that female employees are 37% more likely to experience workplace bullying than men, and most of the bullies are men. Another study found that women that are harassed are targets of workplace aggression and are more likely to depersonalize the aggression and blame their mistreatment on the perpetrator's prejudice toward their gender. On the flip side of that, though, people that are on the receiving end of bullying often internalize or self-blame. One study found that women that worked at male-dominated workplaces were more likely to consider the mistreatment not personal and attribute the abuse to the discrimination of their gender. One professor thinks that the increase in workplace bullying can be traced back to the increased focus on the bottom line. People are more stressed in today's world, and tension is running higher in the office. Because of recent laws about harassments and cases, there has been an increase in policies addressing it within the workplace. Harassment, as described in the article, is any vexatious behavior in the form of repeated and hostile or unwanted conduct, verbal comments, actions, or gestures that affect an employee's dignity or psychological integrity, and that result in a harmful work environment for the employee. The article does point out that incivility does not constitute harassment, and that policy should be reviewed to determine what is considered harassment at your workplace or in your state. The most harassment is apparently in the healthcare sector, which is then followed by government services, transportation services, and waste removal, and then education. In the healthcare sector, the harassment is almost equal between men and women, but in the education field, this isn't the case. 21% of women and 13.8% of men report harassment. The bullying in the healthcare sector has created a culture that perpetuates it. The care of the patient suffers because of this, and there's a decrease in trust and communication, and then more errors occur, which is obviously a very bad thing. A study conducted in 2009 reported that 40% of people that are bullied or harassed, regardless of gender, end up quitting their jobs. Because most of the victims of bullying are women, it contributes to the economic inequality that we see between men and women today. However, it was found that while men bully both other men and women are more inclined to bully other women. Another professor commented that this is because women wouldn't dare bully another man. It was also found that in some cases, even when people take their cases to their unions, they're still not satisfactorily compensated. A study by the Workplace Bullying Institute found that 45% of targets reported panic attacks, sleep problems, or depression. This extra level of stress can often lead to increased health problems, including cardiovascular, neurological, or immune system problems. Harassment and bullying, according to the article, is something that should not be considered gender neutral, and by doing so, it lessens and worsens the decade-long struggle that women have faced. Now let's talk about my thoughts on the article. This article was very insightful on how many people face bullying and harassment, as well as by whom. It was interesting to see the differences between work atmospheres and places. I thought it was most insightful to know the difference between the percentages of women versus men who were targets. I don't think the article should have completely discredited the challenges faced by men, though. I think that it's important to recognize the difference between why some women are harassed or bullied. Knowing that men harbor this prejudice against women simply because they are women is an important step to finding a solution to this problem. I think it is important that we focus on creating safe workplaces, though. People should be taught to respect one another regardless of position or gender. This is why it's important to create training programs that encourage people to report this mistreatment. Supervisors should also be punished for not taking action if they see this happening. Also, I'm surprised and very disturbed to hear that the healthcare sector has the most problems concerning this bullying and harassment. The article pointed out the fact that this mistreatment was not usually based upon gender, but often on one's position. This is ridiculous because nurses and doctors are supposed to be working together, not against each other. I can't believe things like that still happen. Finally, let's talk about why it's important that we recognize and address bullying. It is clear that bullying and harassment is prominent and most definitely related to gender. This does not mean that we can ignore the mistreatment that men face, but it does mean that we have to level the playing field by more aggressively fighting the mistreatment faced by women in the workplace. It is also most important that the culture of the healthcare system is changed because it directly affects the quality of care that these patients receive. There's no reason that the patient should suffer because of the biases of men or other employees.